The night is almost over, but the air still holds the coolness of the desert. You wake before the first light touches the horizon, your skin prickled by the faint breeze drifting through the narrow window of your clay-walled room. Outside, the sound of a distant rooster echoes across the sleeping town, mingling with the murmur of the Nile somewhere beyond the palms. The day has not yet begun, but you know the temple never truly sleeps. Your mat creaks as you rise, bones stiff from yesterday's patrol. The smell of last night's lamp oil still hangs in the air. You reach for your simple linen kilt, folded neatly beside your bedding, and the familiar bronze-tipped spear resting against the wall. Its shaft is smooth, where your hands have worn it down over years of service. You tie the cloth at your waist, stretch your shoulders, and breathe deeply through your nose. The morning has the taste of sand and faint smoke. You light a small clay lamp and let the wick flare to life, throwing a thin gold halo across the room. The walls glow with painted images of gods and guardians, figures you have looked at since boyhood. Each one, a watcher like yourself, frozen in vigilance. So, before we sink deeper into this moment, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you are here, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, let the lights dim, let the fan hum quietly, and let us drift into tonight's story together. You step out into the corridor. The sound of sandals on packed earth echoes softly. Around you, other guards stir awake, some stretching their backs, others quietly eating dates or tying their belts. The smell of bread baking from a nearby courtyard mixes with incense from the temple precinct. You nod to a familiar face, another man who has served longer than you. His beard is streaked with grey, his eyes heavy with the same calm fatigue. Together, you walk the short path toward the temple complex. The eastern sky begins to shift from black to indigo to the faintest shimmer of rose. In the distance, the pylons rise like mountains, carved with stories of kings and gods. Their edges catch the first light, and for a moment they seem alive, as if the hieroglyphs themselves are breathing. You pass small shrines along the path, each holding its own scent and offering. One has wilted lotus flowers from yesterday. Another holds a bowl of honey thick with flies. A stray cat slinks between your legs, purring softly before disappearing into the shadows. The people of the town believe the cats are sacred messengers of Bastet, protector of the home. You have seen men bow to them in the street. When you reach the first gate, the air feels different, heavier, almost electric. The temple looms ahead, and even after years of service, its scale still humbles you. The sandstone blocks are warm to the touch even before sunrise, and their carvings tell stories older than memory. The pylons depict the pharaoh smiting enemies, the gods blessing harvests, the Nile rising under divine command. Every image is meant to remind you who truly holds power. You greet the gatekeeper, a stout man with a scar across his cheek, who yawns and waves lazily. He mutters something about another long day, and you both laugh quietly, careful not to disturb the stillness. The temple's outer courtyard lies beyond him, a wide expanse of flagstones bordered by tall statues. The shadows of the columns stretch far, like fingers reaching back toward night. The ritual of beginning your shift is always the same. You check your spearhead, test the leather straps of your sandals, and glance toward the line of distant palm trees marking the edge of the Nile. It is said that when the river floods, the gods walk its waters. Historians still argue whether those floods were seen as divine miracles or simply the rhythms of nature. But to you, standing here in the soft half-light, it feels like both. As the first birds begin to call from the roof beams, you think of your family still sleeping in the workers' quarter. Your wife, perhaps stirring in her dreams. Your son, who once begged you to bring him inside the temple so he could see the golden statue of Ammon. No one without permission may enter beyond the first gate. You promised him you would describe it one day, but you never did. The head priest appears, flanked by 2 novices carrying small bronze lamps. His linen robes shimmer faintly in the early light, and the scent of myrrh precedes him. He walks slowly, as if each step carries centuries. You and the others bow your heads slightly, not to him as a man, but to the office he represents. The priests are the bridge between gods and mortals. You are merely the wall that keeps the bridge safe. The priest speaks softly, his words partly drowned by the cry of ibis birds overhead. He reminds you all to keep watch for wanderers, to show respect, and to remember that the eyes of the gods are upon every corner of the temple. It is a speech you have heard 100 times, but the rhythm of it is calming, like the steady drip of water in the inner court. The first light crests over the horizon now, spilling gold across the pylons. The sandstone flares in color, and the carvings glow as if newly carved. You squint and feel warmth spreading across your face. Somewhere deep inside the temple, a conch horn sounds, a low, echoing note that marks the opening of the morning rites. You take your position near the gate, spear upright, feet shoulder-width apart. A steady breeze stirs the hem of your kilt. The city beyond is waking. The clatter of carts, the distant song of fishermen along the Nile. You have learned to hear these sounds as part of the same music, the pulse of the living world beyond the sacred walls. Your stomach growls quietly. You pat the small pouch at your belt, which holds a few dates and a piece of dried fish. You decide to wait until the sun is higher before eating. Hunger, like heat, is simply another part of the job. A fellow guard murmurs beside you, asking if you ever wonder whether the gods notice the men who watch over their homes. You smile without answering. Sometimes you do wonder. Sometimes, when the stars are clear and the air still, you imagine the gods walking among the columns after everyone has gone, their voices carried in the wind. One story says that during the reign of Akhenaten, the temple guards were chosen not for strength, but for purity of heart. Another claims that one of them once saw the statue of a god blink. You have never seen such a thing, though you have felt the strange quiet that comes when a prayer is answered and the world seems to hold its breath. A faint tremor of footsteps approaches a novice boy running with a clay jug of water for the morning purification. You watch as he nearly trips over a loose stone, steadies himself, and hurries toward the inner gate. You smile faintly. You were once that boy. The sun rises fully now, clearing the horizon. The desert glows in pale gold. Dust motes swirl in the air like drifting spirits. The temple awakens around you. Drums begin to beat softly within the walls, keeping time with the priest's chants. Incense drifts out through the open gate. sweet and sharp. Your watch has begun. Another long day in service to the unseen. The morning light climbs higher, painting everything in warmth and shadow. You take a deep breath and let your eyes wander across the carvings, gods with animal faces, kings with crowns that pierce the sky. Somewhere behind those walls, 100 hands prepare offerings. Somewhere inside, the gods are already watching. And as you stand there in silence, the day begins again, exactly as it has for 1,000 years. The gates of the temple rise before you, immense and quiet, their edges glowing faintly beneath the climbing sun. They are built not only to protect, but to reminders of the boundary between the world of men and the realm of gods. The carved pylons tell stories of conquest and divine order, each symbol carved so deep that your fingertips can trace centuries in a single motion. The air hums softly with the sound of waking insects. The sandstone beneath your feet is already beginning to warm. From where you stand, the temple seems endless. The statues that guard the gate stand twice your height, their eyes fixed forward, unblinking and eternal. Their shadows stretch long over the stone courtyard, and for a moment you feel as if you are standing within their gaze. Another guard arrives, his spear clinking lightly against his bronze arm cuff. His name is Kepper, a man with a laugh as rough as crushed gravel. You exchange a silent nod. Words are rarely needed between guards. The rhythm of shared duty says enough. He moves to the opposite side of the gate, where the light cuts sharper through the columns. Together, you stand like two halves of the same line, watching the temple breathe awake. A group of acolytes approach carrying baskets filled with lotus petals and palm fronds. They move in a single file, their bare feet whispering across the stone. One boy stumbles and nearly drops his basket, and the priest leading them shoots him a glance sharp enough to silence him for the rest of the morning. You watch, your expression unreadable. Within the temple walls, every gesture matters. There is a rhythm to these mornings, one that repeats with almost sacred precision. The gate opens, then closes again, heavy and slow, its hinges groaning like an old beast. The same words are spoken by the same mouths, the same torches are lit, and the same chants echo off the walls. Change, in this place, moves slower than the river itself. You stand tall, scanning the horizon. To the east, the sun gleams off the Nile like liquid gold. To the west, the tombs rest under the cliffs, silent cities for the dead. You sometimes wonder how many guards have stood here before you, watching the same line where light meets stone. Historians still argue whether temple guards were chosen from soldiers or slaves, whether their role was sacred or merely practical. But in your heart, you know it is both. The walls are sacred, and so are those who keep them. From the corner of your eye, you spot a flicker of movement. Two women approach the temple steps, carrying small clay jars covered with cloth. They keep their heads bowed and their pace measured. Offerings, most likely, for the morning rites. You watch them until they disappear into the outer courtyard, swallowed by the light haze of incense. You shift your weight slightly, letting your spear rest against your shoulder. The bronze tip catches the sun for a moment, gleaming like fire. Behind you, the temple's grand entrance is coming alive. The chants of the priests echo from within, blending with the sound of footsteps and the soft clang of ritual instruments. A scribe approaches, carrying a bundle of scrolls tied with a reed cord. His robes are spotless white, but his face glistens with sweat. He glances at you briefly, not in greeting, but as if to confirm that you are watching. You notice the way he keeps one scroll separate from the rest, tucked tightly under his arm. Perhaps it contains something important, perhaps not. Secrets move through this place like water through sand, invisible, but everywhere. When the gate opens again, it reveals a glimpse of the temple's first courtyard. The light inside seems different from the light outside, softer, filtered through smoke and shadow. You catch the scent of burning myrrh. The air inside the walls feels thicker, almost alive, as if you are standing on the skin of something vast. A young novice walks past you, carrying a tray of oil lamps. His expression is serious, though his hands tremble slightly. You remember being like that once, unsure, eager to prove your worth. The temple teaches patience first, silence second, and obedience last. You learned all three. Kepper clears his throat softly beside you. Same as yesterday, he mutters, just loud enough for you to hear. You smile faintly but say nothing. Some jokes never change, even in holy places. A gust of wind rises suddenly, pushing a swirl of sand across the courtyard. The statues seem to exhale. The scent of the desert fills your lungs, dry and ancient. It carries whispers, perhaps just wind through the pylons, or perhaps something older. The temple is full of such moments, the ones that make you pause and listen. You never speak of them, but every guard knows them well. The priests emerge from the inner gate, their procession forming a slow and deliberate line. They carry trays of fruit, jars of beer, small bundles of herbs. The offerings for the gods must be perfect, untouched by mortal imperfection. Even a fallen petal is replaced before it reaches the altar. You watch, unmoving, as the line passes. The sound of chanting grows stronger, echoing off the massive stone walls like waves against cliffs. You adjust your posture, glancing toward the distant horizon. The marketplace beyond the temple walls is beginning to stir. You can faintly hear the clinking of pottery, the bleating of goats, and the laughter of children. It feels almost strange, a reminder that the ordinary world continues, even while this sacred one repeats its endless rituals. A small boy, perhaps no older than 8, approaches the gate holding a basket of bread. His tunic is dusty, his hair a mess of curls. He stands there uncertainly, eyes wide as he looks up at you. When you ask what he wants, his voice trembles. An offering for my mother. She is sick. You look down at him, then to Kapar. The priest at the courtyard entrance glances your way but says nothing. You nod once, stepping aside to let the boy pass. He places his basket gently before the gate, then backs away, bowing deeply before running off into the sunlight. Kepper murmurs something about compassion being a form of worship, and you nod again. In truth, you agree. You glance upward. A falcon circles high above the pylons, its wings cutting through the sunlight. To some, it is only a bird. To others, it is the eye of Horus himself, watching over the temple. You have seen it circling many mornings now, always at the same time. Maybe coincidence, maybe omen. Hard to tell the difference in a place where gods are said to listen. One of the older guards approaches to relieve you for a moment. You stretch your arms, flexing fingers stiff from gripping the spear. You step back into the shade of the wall and take a sip from your water flask. The water tastes faintly of clay, but it is cool and refreshing. As you rest, your gaze lingers on the carvings of the gate. Each scene tells a story: the birth of a god, the defeat of chaos, the coronation of kings. But there, near the bottom, is a smaller carving, one few ever notice. It shows a man holding a torch, standing between two beasts. His face is turned toward the sun, but his eyes are closed. Some say he represents the first temple guard, the mortal who vowed to never sleep while the gods dreamed. The sun is higher now, casting harsh shadows along the courtyard. The gate creaks again, closing slowly as the morning rites move deeper into the temple. You take your position once more, spear steady, eyes forward. It will be a long day, like all the others. Yet, there is a quiet beauty in the repetition, a rhythm that feels eternal. The temple endures, the gods endure, and so does the silence between the chants. Somewhere deep inside, a bell rings softly, the signal that the next ritual is about to begin. You straighten your back and breathe deeply, letting the warmth of the stone press into your feet. Another cycle has begun. The gates of the gods stand before you, massive and timeless, and you stand before them, a watcher in an endless dawn. The sound of chanting fades as the first ritual ends, replaced by the distant echo of water being poured into bronze basins. You step aside from the main gate, following the short corridor that leads toward the purification court. Every guard must cleanse himself before standing too close to the sacred precinct. It is both discipline and devotion, a daily ritual that humbles even those who have forgotten why they began it in the first place. The corridor smells of damp stone and incense ash. The light is soft here, falling through small slits in the wall that turn dust into glittering threads. You hear the steady dripping of water, slow, patient, like the rhythm of breath. The purification court is a small open courtyard, its floor lined with pale limestone worn smooth by generations of feet. At the center lies a low basin of cool water fed by a narrow channel that draws from the temple's own sacred well. Two young attendants are already there, refilling the jars and humming softly as they work. They nod respectfully as you approach, their heads still bowed. You kneel before the basin and dip your hands into the water. It is shockingly cold. You cup it and pour it over your arms, your shoulders, your neck. The chill wakes you fully, slicing through the slow fog of morning. For a brief moment, the scent of the desert fades, replaced by the faint mineral temps of deep water. You repeat the ritual phrases under your breath, simple words, ones you have said so many times they no longer require thought. The priests say that purification frees you from the dust of the mortal world. In truth, you suspect it is more practical than spiritual. The desert clings to everything, to your skin, to your clothes, to the temple walls themselves. But there is comfort in the act, a small reset before stepping once again into the endless rhythm of service. As you finish, another guard enters the courtyard. It is Menka, a younger man, always eager, always too loud when the priests are not listening. He grins at you as he splashes water over his face. Cold enough to wake the dead, he says, shaking his head. You smile faintly. Then maybe it will keep us awake too, you reply. He laughs softly and sits on the edge of the basin, his spear resting beside him. You ever think about what the priests do in there all day? He asks, jerking his chin toward the direction of the inner sanctum. You glance that way, but do not answer. Curiosity about the inner chambers is dangerous. Everyone has questions, but few are wise enough to voice them. Menka shrugs at your silence, taking it as answer enough. He dries his arms with a piece of linen and stands, his expression softening. Sometimes I think they forget we're part of the temple too, he mutters. You nod. The priests pray, the scribes record, but the guards hold the line that makes both possible. Without the watchers, no prayer would reach the gods in peace. You move to the side bench where your sandals rest, worn smooth at the straps. As you lace them, you notice a small scar near your ankle, the mark left by a scorpion sting many years ago. You remember the pain, the swelling, the way the priest poured vinegar on it while muttering prayers. He told you it was a test from the goddess circuit, protector against poison. You survived, so you suppose she found you worthy. Historians still argue whether these daily rituals were purely symbolic or held medical purpose. The use of oils, salts, and scented waters might have protected against disease as much as it did evil. But, standing here, dripping and awake, you do not think of medicine or history. You think only of the coolness fading from your skin and a faint tremor of wind against the water's surface. The chief guard, an older man named Nebra, steps into the courtyard then. His voice is calm but firm as he reminds everyone to report to their stations for the next rotation. His left leg drags slightly when he walks, a wound from a skirmish in his youth, long before he was chosen to serve in the temple. You have heard him say that guarding the house of the gods is harder than guarding the pharaoh himself. The pharaoh can command men, the gods command silence. You follow the others out of the purification court, back toward the main passage that leads to the outer court. The floor stones are cool underfoot. As you walk, you catch sight of murals painted along the walls. Bright blues, deep reds, gold leaf still clinging in places despite the years. They tell of the birth of the sun god, of his nightly journey through the underworld. You notice how the paint seems to shimmer differently with each step, as if the story itself moves with you. A small alcove along the corridor catches your eye. One of the niches where attendants keep their tools and offerings. Among the jars and baskets lies a small clay figure, barely the size of your hand. It is shaped like a falcon, but with oddly human eyes. Perhaps a charm left by one of the novices. You resist the urge to touch it. In the temple, even the smallest object may carry power. You emerge once more into the light of the courtyard. The sun is climbing now, spreading warmth across the flagstones. The smell of incense is stronger, mixed with the faint sweetness of dates roasting somewhere nearby. The hum of daily life is beginning to rise. The buzz of flies, the rustle of linen, the low murmur of prayer. A column of priests moves past, their white robes almost glowing. One of them carries a small brazier filled with smoking herbs, juniper, perhaps, or frankincense. The smoke coils upward, catching the sunlight in ribbons. You watch it twist and drift until it disappears into the open air. The chief guard stops beside you, his weathered hand resting briefly on your shoulder. The day will be long, he says quietly. Keep your eyes open, but not your heart. The gods do not need your thoughts, only your watch. You nod in silence. The words sound simple, but their weight lingers. Once he leaves, you glance toward the outer gate. From this angle, you can see the entire approach. The long path lined with Sphinx statues. The cluster of palms beyond, and in the far distance, the faint shimmer of the river. It is beautiful in its stillness, yet you know how fragile it is. One small spark of unrest, one careless word, can bring the calm crashing down. You take your position again, spear upright eyes scanning the horizon. The morning heat is beginning to build, but the memory of cold water still clings faintly to your skin. The temple hums behind you, chants, footsteps, the ring of bronze against stone. All around, life and worship blend into a single sound, steady and unbroken. Somewhere, a priest begins reciting verses that speak of rebirth, of cleansing, of the endless turning of time. You listen without meaning to. The words are ancient, yet familiar, their rhythm slow and soothing. For a moment, you almost forget your duty and simply breathe. The purification has done its work. Your body feels lighter, your thoughts quiet. Whatever comes next, you are ready. The courtyard vibrates with sound now. The day has stepped fully into its rhythm. The chants echo from the inner halls like waves rolling through stone. You can feel them beneath your feet, slow, heavy, deliberate. The air tastes of burning herbs and oil, the scent thick enough to cling to your tongue. From the outer gate, the processional path is clear. You and the others take position as the priests begin their sacred procession, carrying the morning offerings into the temple's inner chambers. It is a ceremony older than any of you, older than the carvings on the walls. Every movement is planned, rehearsed, and repeated. Nothing happens by chance. The line forms near the courtyard's center, where sunlight spills in through the high opening above. The priests wear long linen robes, spotless and white, tied with golden cords. Around their necks hang small pendants carved with symbols of the gods they serve. Some carry baskets of flowers, others trays of figs, dates, and honey cakes. A few hold small statues wrapped in fresh cloth, images of the gods that will be re-anointed during the rites. A hush spreads as the high priest appears. His head is shaved clean, his robe edged with embroidered blue and gold. In his hands he carries a golden bowl filled with sacred oil. The sunlight strikes it, sending a brief flash of brightness across the faces of the guards. The procession begins. You watch in silence, your spear steady at your side. The chant deepens. Drums sound faintly from somewhere inside the hypo-style hall. Slow, steady beats that match the rhythm of footsteps. The priests move like a single living creature, each motion flowing into the next. The scent of myrrh drifts thicker now, curling upward into the open air. You notice how the statues along the walls seem to glow in the morning light. The god Amun stands with his tall crown, his gaze fixed beyond the horizon. The goddess Mut, carved beside him, holds an ankh close to her chest, her lips frozen in a quiet smile. To the people, these are gods. To you, standing here every day, they have become something else. Guardians of silence, witnesses of endless repetition. A young novice walks at the rear of the line, clutching a small vessel of milk. His steps are uneven, his eyes darting nervously. When he passes you, you catch his whisper, a hurried prayer for strength. You remember when your own hands once trembled like his. The temple demands precision, and mistakes are rarely forgotten. The procession disappears through the first archway, the chanting fading slightly as they move deeper into the sacred halls. You can still see the flicker of their torches reflecting on the polished stone. You stand motionless, listening to the rhythm of their voices. The echo is mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. It feels as if the temple itself is breathing with them. Kepper stands nearby, leaning lightly on his spear. Every morning the same, he murmurs, and still it makes my hair stand on end. You nod without turning. There is something powerful about witnessing it. Not the ritual itself, perhaps, but the way it bends time. You could close your eyes and imagine the same scene happening 1,000 years ago, and nothing would seem out of place. Historians still argue whether the priests believed their rituals actually fed the gods or merely honored them symbolically. Some claim the offerings were later consumed by the priesthood, their feasts disguised as devotion. But as you watch the golden light flicker over their faces, you sense a deeper sincerity. Belief, after all, is its own kind of sustenance. The drums shift rhythm, marking the next stage of the ritual. From the courtyard, you see thin trails of smoke rising from the sanctuary doorways, curling into the blue sky like threads of incense, writing messages to the heavens. The people outside the gates can only imagine what happens inside. You, standing here, are close enough to hear the low murmur of prayers, but far enough to never understand them fully. A flock of doves bursts suddenly from the roof, startled by something unseen. Their wings beat against the rising sun, scattering feathers like bits of silver. You follow them with your eyes until they vanish beyond the pylons. For a moment, the sound of wings replaces the sound of chanting, and it feels almost peaceful. Then, from deep within, the horns sound long, droning notes that roll across the courtyard. Every guard straightens, every servant freezes in place. This is the moment when the statue of the god is revealed to the priests, when the veil is lifted and light touches the divine image once more. None but the highest initiates may see it. You stand still, your heart slow but steady. Even from here, you can feel the shift in the air. The priests bow, the drums stop, the courtyard falls silent except for the faint rustle of palm leaves overhead. The sunlight seems to pause too, caught between brightness and shadow. You imagine the golden statue glowing in the dim hall, the god awakened by the sound of human breath and human faith. And then, just as quickly, the drums resume. The horn fades into an echo. The procession re-emerges, their faces calm but their eyes distant, as if they have touched something too bright to name. They move past you again, carrying empty trays now, their steps lighter. The ritual is complete. The god has been fed, the order restored. One of the older priests catches your gaze for a moment. His eyes are pale, almost milky with age. He nods faintly, not to you, perhaps, but to the world itself. You return the gesture with a quiet bow. As the procession leaves the courtyard, a strange calm settles over the temple. The air feels heavier, filled with the residue of incense and whispered words. Even Kepper falls silent. For a moment, no one moves. The temple itself seems to exhale, as if relieved that the ritual has gone as it should. A lizard darts across the stone, its scales glinting in the sunlight. You watch it climb onto a statue's foot and pause, unafraid. The world, it seems, has resumed its normal rhythm. You look toward the distant gate, where the light of morning now burns bright. Somewhere beyond, the city is alive with noise and laughter. But here, within these walls, time still belongs to the gods. You shift your spear, its bronze tip flashing briefly, and take your place once more beside the gate. The day continues, slow and deliberate, the same way it always has. And yet, deep down, you cannot shake the faint feeling that the gods had looked your way, if only for a breath. The morning rites fade into the background hum of daily life. The sun has risen high enough now to press warmth against the stone under your feet. The air quivers faintly, the smell of myrrh replaced by the dust and breath of the crowd beginning to gather outside the gates. The priests retreat to their inner chambers, and the temple once again opens to the world beyond. Your duty shifts now. It is the hour when common folk come to the temple, men and women of the town carrying baskets, jars, and small animals, hoping for blessings, forgiveness, or favor. Some come barefoot, others in finely woven robes. The gods draw all kinds. You step to the outer gate and signal for it to open. The sound of its slow movement fills the courtyard, deep and grinding, the stone rubbing against stone. Light floods in, and with it comes the crowd. They enter not all at once, but in a patient trickle, moving with the quiet reverence that these walls demand. The first to approach is an elderly woman, her back bent and her steps measured. She carries a small bundle of herbs tied in linen. When she reaches the courtyard, she kneels, touches her forehead to the ground, and murmurs a prayer too soft to catch. A young priest approaches, takes her offering, and guides her gently aside. She does not look up at you or anyone else. Her eyes are wet, but her face is calm. Behind her comes a man leading a goat by a rope. The animal bleats, tugging at the cord, its hooves clicking against the stone. The man mutters apologies under his breath as the priest gestures for him to stop. You stand nearby, watchful but distant. The rules are simple. Guards do not interfere unless order is broken. There is no shouting here, no bargaining. The marketplace noise of the city fades at the edge of the courtyard. Inside, even whispers seem to move slower. The temple teaches silence as much as it teaches devotion. The flow of visitors continues, and you watch them pass, each carrying some piece of their hope. A pot of milk, a wreath of papyrus, a jar filled with honey, its surface shimmering in the sunlight. Every offering feels small compared to the vastness of the gods, but it is the small things that seem to hold the most meaning. You shift your stance, scanning the faces as they move. A young boy carries a basket of dates, struggling under its weight. His father follows, guiding him gently forward. A woman holds a small clay figure of the goddess Hathor and kisses it 3 times before handing it over to the priest. Every gesture feels familiar. You have seen these same acts repeated countless times, yet each still holds its quiet dignity. One man stops near you, his expression unsure. He carries no offering, only a folded piece of papyrus. When you ask if he needs help, he shakes his head. A petition, he says softly, to the god, Amen. For work. His voice trembles slightly. You nod, directing him to the scribe's table near the steps. The temple receives such requests daily. The gods, it seems, are always busy listening. Historians still argue whether temples truly served as places of prayer for ordinary people, or whether they were simply centers of administration and wealth. Standing here, watching the faces pass, you feel the truth lies somewhere in between. The priests might count coins and record taxes, but the people still come with their hearts open. Faith and bureaucracy have learned to share the same doorway. The heat intensifies as the line grows. You glance upward, watching a hawk circle lazily over the pylons. Its wings glint like polished metal. Some say these birds carry messages to the gods. Others say they are simply drawn to the smell of sacrifice. Both ideas seem possible in this place. A sudden commotion breaks your focus. Near the edge of the courtyard, two men argue quietly. One accuses the other of cutting in line. Their voices rise, sharp and tense, and the priest nearby looks uncertain. You step forward, spear in hand but pointed low. The sound of your footsteps alone is enough. The men see you and fall silent. You say nothing. Silence, when delivered with authority, often speaks louder than any words. They bow their heads and step apart. The line resumes. The order is restored. You return to your post, the sun pressing harder now against your shoulders. Kepper gives a small approving nod from the other side of the gate. A group of children enters next, following their mother. They carry small clay birds and drop them one by one into a shallow offering bowl. The smallest girl glances up at you shyly and smiles before her mother guides her forward. You smile back before turning away, pretending not to notice how the gesture lingers in your mind. You think of your own child again, your son, whose laughter once filled your home. You promised him a glimpse of the temple's wonders one day, but rules are rules. Perhaps when he is older, he will earn his own post here. The thought fills you with quiet pride, though a trace of sadness lingers beneath it. From the steps above, a senior priest's voice carries across the courtyard. He speaks of devotion, of patience, of the gods' endless generosity. The crowd listens, heads bowed. His tone is rehearsed, yet comforting. Like a lullaby you have heard 1,000 times, but never grown tired of. You stand motionless through it all, the sun creeping higher, the shadows shrinking. Sweat gathers at the back of your neck, sliding down the curve of your spine. You let it fall. The body adjusts to the heat eventually, just as the mind adjusts to repetition. The offerings continue to pour in. A man with a jar of oil shaped like a lotus. A merchant laying down coins etched with the pharaoh's face. A farmer carrying a bundle of papyrus reeds to thank the gods for his harvest. Each one bows before stepping away, their faces softened by relief. One of the acolytes collects the offerings and records them on a scroll. You watch him work, the reed pen scratching faintly against the papyrus. He moves with precision, counting each item aloud before sealing it in a chest. His voice is barely a whisper, but in the quiet of the temple, even whispers sound like echoes. Hours pass this way. The sun climbs, the air shimmers, and the courtyard fills and empties in waves. You lose track of time until the chief guard calls for a rotation. You step aside, letting another take your place, and retreat to the shade beneath a column. There, for a moment, you simply breathe. The incense burns low now, its smoke a thin thread curling upward. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the rustle of robes, the soft clink of offering jars, the low chant of priests behind the walls. The temple feels alive, not in the way people are alive, but in the way rivers or mountains are, slow, eternal, indifferent to the lives moving within it. You are part of that rhythm now, another pulse in the heartbeat of this ancient place. You open your eyes again, glance toward the gate, and see the next line of visitors forming. The day continues. The flow never stops. You adjust your grip on the spear, step back into the light, and resume your watch. The gods are patient, and so must their guards be. By midday, the sun has turned the air into something visible, a wavering curtain of heat that bends the light itself. Even the sandstone walls seem to breathe, releasing warmth in slow, steady sighs. You shift your stance, feeling the grit of dust against your skin, the weight of armorless duty pressing into your shoulders. The crowd has thinned now. Only a few linger in the courtyard, finishing their prayers, leaving small tokens on the steps. A priest collects them one by one, his movements practiced, careful not to spill or bruise the delicate offerings. You stand nearby, your shadow short and sharp against the stone. Kepper returns from the outer gate, wiping sweat from his brow with the edge of his kilt. "Quiet morning," he mutters. "Too quiet, maybe." You nod, eyes still sweeping the courtyard. In places like this, quiet is often the sound of something unseen. A breeze stirs for the first time in hours, carrying with it the scent of wet reeds and distant water. The Nile must be high today. The faint smell cuts through the dust and incense, bringing a moment's relief. You inhale deeply, letting it cool your lungs. Then you hear it faint at first, a whisper of voices near the temple wall. Not prayers, not chanting, something else. You glance toward the sound, your eyes narrowing against the glare. Two men stand near the edge of the courtyard, half hidden in the shadow of a statue. Their gestures are small, but their tones carry a sharpness not meant for this place. You take a few quiet steps closer, keeping your spear low, pretending to adjust your stance. The voices become clearer. "I am telling you," one hisses, "it was gone before dawn. The chest was sealed yesterday, and who would take from the gods?" The other replies, his tone trembling between anger and fear. You speak too freely. You pause just out of sight, your pulse steady. "Stolen offerings." It is not the first time you have heard the rumor. Priests speak of purity, but wealth attracts hands, even in holy places. You wait, still, as the statues around you. The first man lowers his voice again. The scribe suspects the novices, but the chest was under guard. The second man glances round nervously, his gaze brushing the air near where you stand. You shift slightly, letting sunlight catch the tip of your spear. The glint is enough. They fall silent, eyes dropping, their bodies stiffening. You step forward then, slow but deliberate. "Everything in the temple is seen," you say quietly, "even the whispers." Their heads bow immediately. One stammers an apology, saying they were only speaking of rumor. You study them for a moment, both priests, assistants, not thieves, at least not today. You nod once and turn away. Fear often guards better than walls. As you return to your post, Kepper raises an eyebrow. Trouble? He asks. Nothing that breathes loud enough to matter, you reply, and he chuckles. The sound breaks the heaviness for a moment. Still, the thought lingers. Theft within a temple is more than crime. It is sacrilege. The punishment is severe, but the shame even greater. Historians still argue whether temple thefts were rare or simply were hidden. The records speak of purity, but you suspect truth prefers the shadows. You resume your station, watching the patterns of the courtyard. Every sound feels sharper now. The scuff of sandals, the creak of wooden trays, the faint rattle of a jar being set down. The temple has its own language, one you have learned to read through rhythm. From somewhere within the inner halls comes the distant sound of chanting again. A different melody this time, slower, heavier. It carries the tone of correction, the kind used when the priests cleanse a space or drive away impurity. You glance toward the archway, half expecting to see smoke, but none comes. Kepper murmurs, "They must have found something missing." His tone is flat, but his eyes say more. He has seen what happens when suspicion moves inward. The priests will question the scribes will blame the novices, and the novices will whisper in the dark until someone confesses. Truth may not matter, only the restoration of balance. You shift your weight, feeling the slow pulse of the sun against your neck. In this place, even silence feels dangerous. A low bell sounds from within, marking the hour. The next rotation begins. You and Kepper exchange brief nods and switch positions. The motion so routine it feels almost like breathing. The guards' shifts are arranged so that one always faces the gate, the other the temple heart. You now face inward, watching the doorways that lead deeper into shadow. The air here smells of hot stone and old incense. Dust dances in thin beams of light, cutting through the high openings. From this side, you can see more of the daily workings, attendants carrying scrolls, novices sweeping sand from the floor, a pair of priests debating softly near the offering tables. The debate grows sharper, their voices carrying words about record discrepancies. You look away. The temple thrives on routine, but routine hides the cracks. You have learned that well. You step back into the shade of a column and glance up at the carvings there. They show the god Thoth, Ibiseded, writing the fates of men. His quill is forever poised above a tablet, ready to record the next sin or virtue. You wonder what he would write about this place today. Devotion, deceit, or both. The breeze returns, stirring the edges of your linen. You close your eyes briefly, listening to the faint rustle of palm leaves outside the walls. The heat presses close, wrapping around you like a heavy cloth. For a brief moment, you drift between wakefulness and thought, between the sound of chanting and the silence of stone. Then a faint sound cuts through footsteps, light but hurried. You open your eyes as a young novice appears, panting slightly. He bows quickly before you. The chief guard requests presence near the archives. He says, his voice shakes slightly, either from heat or from fear of bearing a message that carries weight. You nod and hand your spear to Kepper. "Keep the gate," you say. He grins faintly, though his eyes remain watchful. You follow the novice across the courtyard, through a shaded passage where the air cools by a fraction. The walls here are lined with painted lotus flowers, their blue pigment faded with age. The path leads toward the record chamber, a place few guards enter except by command. As you walk, the novice glances up at you. They say something went missing, he murmurs. You say nothing. Words like that can find their way to ears that listen too closely. The hallway narrows, the air thick with the scent of ink and papyrus. From beyond the next doorway, you hear voices, low, strained, measured. You recognize the chief guard's tone among them. Whatever waits beyond those doors, it hums with the tension that only sacred places can hold, the kind that whispers of both reverence and fear. You straighten your shoulders, step forward, and prepare to enter the shadowed heart of the temple. The passage leading to the archives feels cooler than the rest of the temple. The sunlight does not reach here, and the air carries the dry scent of parchment and cedar resin. The deeper you walk, the quieter the world becomes, until even the distant chants fade into silence. You can hear only the soft slap of your sandals against stone and the rhythmic drip of water from a hidden crack somewhere above. When you step into the archive chamber, your eyes take a moment to adjust. The room is long and narrow, its walls lined with wooden racks filled with scrolls and tablets. The air smells of ink, dust, and the faint tang of oil used to keep insects away. A few priests move carefully among the shelves, whispering as they check seals and inscriptions. The chief guard, Nebra, stands near the doorway, his broad frame casting a long shadow. He turns when you enter, his expression unreadable. You took your time, he says, though his tone carries no anger. We have a matter to observe. Stay silent unless spoken to. You nod once. At the center of the room stands a tall scribe with narrow shoulders and a thin mouth, his fingers stained with ink. He clutches a tablet of soft clay against his chest as though it were a piece of himself. His eyes dart between Nebra and the priests behind him. One of the priests steps forward, his voice measured. During morning inventory, it was noted that 2 tablets from the grain records were missing. The seal was broken. Nebra glances toward you. Show him. The scribe hesitates before moving to a low shelf near the back wall. He gestures toward an empty space between 2 rows of carefully stacked tablets. The indentation in the dust is clear. Something once rested there. You crouch, running your fingers lightly over the edge. The seal's remnants still cling to the stone in a faint smear of red wax. 2 tablets, Nebra repeats, folding his arms. You are sure it was not a mistake in your counting? The scribe shakes his head quickly. I counted thrice, my lord. These were records of grain received for the temple kitchens. Without them, the measures cannot be balanced. One of the younger priests mutters that it could be nothing, perhaps an error of placement, but the high priest beside him cuts him off with a look. Nothing in the temple is misplaced, he says quietly, not even dust. You remain silent, watching the play of power move across their faces. You have seen this dance before, the slow weaving of suspicion, the careful choosing of words that accuse without naming. The temple may be a house of gods, but it is still filled with men. Historians still argue whether such records served faith or finance. Some say the temples controlled Egypt's wealth more tightly than the throne itself. Others claim the priests guarded only the god stores. Standing here, You can see how the two might be the same thing. The scribe looks pale now, his fingers trembling slightly as he clutches the remaining tablet. Perhaps, he stammers, a novice was instructed to move them and forgot to record it. Nebra's eyes narrow. Names? The scribe hesitates, then whispers. The boy Senate, perhaps. He assisted yesterday before dusk. A ripple of unease moves through the priests. You recognize the name. The same young novice who had carried the vessel of milk during the morning procession. Barely 16, his eyes too large for his face, his steps always careful but never confident. The high priest nods once. Find him, he says to Nebra. You and Nebra exchange glances. He gestures for you to follow, and together you leave the chamber. The moment the door closes, the cool air gives way to the heavy warmth of the corridor again. You can still smell ink on your hands. You walk in silence for a time, your sandals whispering against the floor. Then Nebra says quietly, if the boy is guilty, it will not be theft that ruins him, but shame. The gods forgive faster than priests do. You do not answer. The thought lingers, though when you reach the novice's quarters, the air is thick with the smell of rush mats and stale water. A few boys kneel in the corner, sorting offerings of flowers into small baskets. They freeze when they see you. Nebra's gaze sweeps over them until it finds Senat, thin, nervous, his hands still dusted with petals. Come, Nebra says simply. The boy obeys, standing quickly, bowing his head. His lips move, perhaps a silent prayer. You follow as Nebra leads him out into the light of the courtyard. There, away from the others, he stops. 2 tablets are missing from the grain records. Nebra says, you handled them last evening. Senate swallows hard, his voice small. I only helped carry them. The scribe told me where to place them. I did not touch the seals. Did anyone else? Nebra asks. The boy hesitates, glancing down. You can see fear in the way his shoulders tighten. I saw someone near the shelves when I left, he murmurs finally. A man in priest's robes. But I did not see his face. Nebra studies him in silence for a long moment, then says softly, truth weighs less than silence. Remember that. He dismisses the boy back to his quarters, then turns to you. Keep an eye near the archives tonight. If someone returns, we will know. You nod. Duty folds easily into your bones by now. When you return to the courtyard, the heat hits you like a wall. The air shimmers so strongly that the statues seem to move slightly, their forms bending in the brightness. You blink until they settle again. Kepper greets you with a half smile. You look like you've been speaking with ghosts. Something close, you say. He laughs, but the sound dies quickly under the weight of the afternoon. The temple's rhythm resumes, though you can sense a thread of unease beneath it. Priests walk a little faster. Novices speak a little softer. Even the birds perched on the pylons seem to hesitate before taking flight. By now, the sun is directly overhead. The stone beneath your feet is almost too hot to touch. The air smells faintly of baked clay and incense smoke. From the kitchens beyond the western wall drifts the scent of roasting grain and bread. The meal offerings being prepared for the evening rites. You stand in the shade, feeling the world pulse with heat. Somewhere in the distance, a gong sounds 3 times, marking the midpoint of the day. Half the hours are done. The rest stretch out before you, heavy as the air itself. You look once more toward the temple's heart, toward the unseen rooms where men whisper about missing tablets and stolen faith. The gods, you think, must be patient listeners. They have heard all this before. You adjust your spear and settle back into your post, eyes half on the gate, half on the shadowed corridors beyond. The temple is quiet again, but you know now that even silence here carries secrets. The afternoon heat settles like a weight across your shoulders, thick and unmoving. Even the air seems to shimmer with exhaustion. The courtyard stands half empty now, its surface reflecting light so bright it hurts to look at. You shift your stance, finding what little shade the massive gate provides, and breathe through your mouth to keep the dust from coating your tongue. Somewhere deep inside the temple, the chants have quieted to a murmur. The priests will not return to the outer halls until sunset. The midday hours are for writing, recording, and prayer, the quiet heartbeat of the temple's hidden life. You hear soft footsteps behind you and turn to see one of the scribes approaching. He walks with his head slightly bowed, as if he fears that even the sun might overhear him. His name is Didu, one of the temple's mid-ranked record keepers, known for his precision and for the faint ink stains that never seem to leave his hands. He stops a few steps away and bows slightly. "Guard," he says, his voice low and careful. "I need assistance with a delivery." The chief guard said you were to help. You nod. "Where to?" "The record chamber," he says, glancing toward the northern corridor. 2 tablets must be transferred to the storage room before the evening rites. You follow him through the passage, the stone under your feet cooler than the sunlight outside. The air smells faintly of ink and cedar oil again. But beneath that, something else, the sharp scent of worry. Didu keeps his pace quick, his movements nervous. When you reach the record chamber, you find the same room as before. Tall, narrow, lined with shelves. Scrolls and tablets fill every space. Didu moves toward a table near the far wall, where a few sealed clay tablets sit under a strip of linen cloth. He lifts one carefully, revealing inscriptions etched deep into its surface, lines of grain tallies, names, and temple marks. "These must be carried to the archive vault," he explains, adjusting his grip. "The others may not be touched." You take one of the tablets in your hands. It is heavier than you expect, cool despite the heat. The carvings catch the faint light spilling from the doorway. You wonder how many hands have touched this same object before. Priests, scribes, guards, long gone. It feels like holding time itself. As you walk through the corridor toward the storage vault, you notice Didu's glances. His eyes dart toward shadows, as if expecting someone to emerge. The tension presses around you like invisible smoke. When you reach the vault, the door stands half open, the metal latch warm from the sun that filters through the high slit above. Inside, rows of shelves stretch into the gloom, each marked with painted symbols. The smell here is old, a mix of papyrus, oil, and age. Didu gestures for you to set the tablet on a stone platform near the wall. You do so carefully, the dull sound echoing softly. He places his beside it, then leans in to inspect the seals. His hands tremble slightly. "You seem uneasy," you say quietly. He freezes for a moment, then lets out a slow breath. "Something is wrong in the records," he admits. numbers that do not balance, seals that break and reappear. I told the high priest weeks ago, but he said the gods will correct what must be corrected. And yet, here you are correcting it yourself. You reply. He gives a faint, humorless smile. The gods do not count grain, God, we do. The words linger in the quiet room. For a moment, the only sound is the soft rasp of papyrus shifting as air moves through the narrow space. Then he lowers his voice further. They say the missing tablets were not taken for greed, but to hide something mismeasured offerings. Perhaps, if the records are wrong, it means the gods were underfed. You glance toward the sealed chest near the far wall. Or someone wanted others to believe so. He nods slowly, eyes down. Faith and fear feed from the same bowl. Historians still argue whether temple scribes were mere record keepers or the hidden administrators of Egypt's wealth. Some believe they were the quiet rulers of the kingdom, moving power not with swords but with numbers. Watching Didu now, you can almost believe it. The ink on his hands looks darker than blood. He straightens suddenly, as if remembering his place. "Forgive my talk," he says softly. "I forget that walls have ears." You nod, and eyes too. You both leave the vault, closing the heavy door behind you. The clang echoes through the corridor, final and hollow. The air outside feels hotter now, as if the temple itself has grown restless. When you step back into the courtyard, the light nearly blinds you. The afternoon sun has turned the sandstone into gold. Kepper stands across the way, leaning on his spear, squinting at the horizon. When he spots you, he waves lazily. "Another secret errand," he calls. "Something like that," you reply. He chuckles and takes a long drink from his water skin before tossing it your way. The water tastes faintly of metal but refreshes all the same. You hand it back, and the two of you stand in silence for a while, watching the light dance across the pylons. A low murmur draws your attention to the temple's edge. Two novices carry jars of water toward the small fountain in the courtyard's center. The water inside gleams, cool and inviting, a tiny miracle in the middle of heat. You watch them pour it carefully, their movements slow and reverent. For a brief moment, peace settles again. The hum of the temple returns to its steady rhythm, footsteps, whispers, the rustle of robes. Dedu, the scribe, has not gone back inside. He stands near the edge of the courtyard, his back to you, staring towards the direction of the archives. His hands are clasped tightly behind him, his shoulders tense. Before you can speak, a gust of wind sweeps through, scattering dust and petals across the courtyard. Dudu turns slightly, catches your gaze for the briefest moment, then walks away, not toward the temple, but toward the outer walls, where shadows stretch long and thin. You watch him go, the unease from before returning. The temple feels different now, not louder, not quieter, but aware, as if it too is listening. You adjust your stance, spear in hand, and let your eyes follow the fading figure of the scribe until he disappears into the light. The day presses on, the sun burning low and hard, the air shimmering around every movement. Somewhere behind the walls, secrets shift again, just enough to disturb the dust. You exhale slowly, steadying your thoughts. In a place this ancient, even silence can lie. By the time the sun dips lower in the sky, The air has thickened into something almost solid. The light has shifted from gold to amber, draping the courtyard in long shadows. You can feel the faint hum of exhaustion running through the guards, a quiet ache in every breath. The slow drag of a day spent beneath the desert sun. This is the hour when small things start to test the calm. The heat softens tempers. And the crowd that trickles into the temple now is different from the morning's hopeful visitors. They come with questions unanswered, requests denied, offerings unaccepted. You can sense it in their eyes, the frustration that hides beneath devotion. You stand once again near the central fountain, your spear steady but relaxed. The water shimmers faintly, cool and inviting. The novices who filled it earlier have long since gone to assist in evening preparations. You watch as a few worshippers kneel near its edge, dipping their fingers and touching their foreheads in quiet prayer. The sound of water against stone is the only soft thing left in the heat. Then you notice a figure moving quickly through the courtyard. A man, dusty and thin, his robe torn at the edge. He clutches a small clay jar to his chest. You recognize the look on his face, the mix of fear and desperation. Before you can call out, he kneels by the fountain, plunging the jar into the sacred water. The splash is louder than it should be. Several people gasp. A priest turns sharply, his expression a mask of disapproval. "Stop him," he calls. You step forward immediately, your sandals slapping against the stone. The man freezes, his hands trembling as he lifts the dripping jar from the water. You can see that his eyes are wild, rimmed red from the sun. He bows quickly, words tumbling from his mouth. "Please, my daughter, she burns with fever. The river is too far. I only stop speaking." The priest interrupts, voice rising. "The sacred water is not for theft." You stand between them now, your shadow falling over the kneeling man. He looks up at you, the lines on his face deep with worry. The jar in his hands shakes, drops of water falling onto the stone and vanishing instantly. You can almost feel the heat swallowing them whole. "Let him stand," you say quietly. The priest's eyes flash. "The purity of this place must not be defiled. He will be punished." You meet his gaze calmly. "He is not a thief," you reply. "He is a father." The man lowers his head again, tears cutting through the dust on his cheeks. Around you, the small crowd that had gathered stays silent, unsure whether to watch or turn away. You can feel the tension thick in the air, not anger exactly, but something close to fear. For a long moment, no one moves. The priest seems to struggle between outrage and uncertainty. Then he gestures sharply toward the water. The basin must be drained and refilled. Purity restored. His voice trembles slightly, the edge of command softening into unease. You nod, still keeping your eyes on the kneeling man. "Take your jar," you say to him softly, "and go. Do not return until night has cooled the ground." He looks up in disbelief. You would allow." "Go," you repeat, quieter but firmer. He hesitates only a moment before scrambling to his feet. He clutches the jar close, nods again and again, and backs away toward the gate. The crowd parts silently to let him through. You watch until he vanishes beyond the courtyard wall. When you turn back, the priest's expression is unreadable. "The gods see all," he says finally. "They also forgive," you answer. He opens his mouth as if to respond, then closes it again. After a pause, he simply turns away, calling for the novices to drain the basin. You remain by the fountain as they work, the water spilling out in a shimmering stream that catches the dying sunlight. The sound is soft, almost musical. You watch the last of it vanish into the cracks between stones. Kepper joins you a few minutes later, his voice low. "You should not have interfered," he says, though not unkindly. "The priests remember such things." "Let them remember," you reply. "The gods will too." He shakes his head, but smiles faintly. "You and your faith." "I prefer wine," it answers faster. You laugh quietly, the sound dry and brief. The tension breaks just enough to let the air move again. Historians still argue whether temple water truly held healing power, or if it was the belief that healed. The jars taken home by worshippers often became family relics, said to cure sickness or bless crops. Perhaps the gods lived in the water, or perhaps they lived only in the act of hope itself. The novices finish their task and refill the fountain with fresh water drawn from the temple well. The surface glows faintly in the fading light, as if purified by more than just the ritual. You stare at it for a while, letting the sight calm your thoughts. As evening nears, the courtyard slowly empties. The heat begins to loosen its grip, and a faint wind carries the scent of the river again. You watch the sky shift from gold to red to a deep, heavy purple. Shadows stretch long across the flagstones, joining together like ink pooling at the base of the statues. A bell rings softly from within, the signal that offerings will soon be made for the evening rites. The priests emerge again, their robes darker now in the fading light. They move slower, their voices lower. The chants no longer rise with the energy of morning, but flow like a lullaby for the dying day. You feel the change in the temple's rhythm. The energy that began in fire now turns to stillness. Even the air cools by a degree or two, enough for breath to feel easier. Kepper yawns beside you. "One more watch," he says. "Then night's ours." You nod, but your thoughts linger on the man with the jar. Somewhere out there, he kneels beside his sick child, pressing cool water to her forehead. You picture her eyes fluttering open, her breathing steadying. You do not know if the gods answer prayers like that, perhaps they only listen. But sometimes listening is enough. As the sun sinks behind the pylons, you take your place once more near the fountain. The last light glints on the water's surface, turning it briefly to liquid gold before fading into shadow. You let the sound of chanting and the rustle of robes fill the air until all sense of time softens. The temple has seen 1,000 such evenings before, and it will see 1,000 more. But for this moment, as the world exhales beneath the coming night, peace feels possible again. The sun slips behind the horizon, and the light that once burned white now melts into deep orange, then to violet. The long pylons glow for a moment, their carvings holding the color like warm skin before surrendering it to darkness. The air cools slightly, the kind of relief that feels earned after hours beneath the relentless sun. You can finally breathe without tasting the desert. This is the hour of the afternoon offerings, when the temple transitions from noise to hush, from motion to stillness. The priests move like shadows now, their robes brushing the stone in near silence. The smell of roasted fowl drifts from the kitchens, mingling with the scent of beer and honey. It is the smell of worship in Egypt, sweat, smoke, and food that will never be eaten by those who prepared it. You and the other guards stand near the entrance of the inner court, spears upright but your minds wandering. The rhythm of the day has softened. The hardest heat has passed, and the tasks ahead require patience more than strength. From the kitchen courtyard comes a procession of servants carrying platters stacked with offerings. Bread baked into intricate shapes, roasted goose glistening with oil, jars of beer sealed with clay lids. Behind them walk the priests, chanting softly, the tone low and reverent. Their voices bounce off the walls, creating a hum that settles somewhere deep inside your chest. The lead priest carries a golden ladle filled with oil, its surface flickering with reflected torchlight. He stops before the main altar, where the statues of the gods wait in perfect stillness. One by one, the offerings are placed before them. The smell of food grows rich, warm, and strange, hunger mixed with holiness. Your stomach tightens, reminding you that you have not eaten since morning. You glance briefly toward the kitchens beyond the courtyard. A cook stands by the doorway, watching the ritual, his face slick with sweat, his hands stained with spice. Later, after the gods have had their share, the leftovers will feed the priests, the scribes, and perhaps even the guards if fortune is kind. A priest begins to pour beer onto the ground before the altar. The sound of it, thick and slow, joins the steady rhythm of chanting. Steam rises faintly from the hot stone, carrying a sweet, yeasty scent into the air. You watch quietly, your mind half here and half somewhere far away in the narrow alleys outside the temple where the people wait for the sun to drop completely, where mothers stir lentil pots and fishermen mend nets by lamplight. The world feels smaller beyond these walls, yet somehow more free. Kepper leans slightly toward you and mutters, "They say the gods never eat. The priests just pretend they do." You suppress a smile. "Maybe they share the meal through scent," you whisper back. He snorts softly, almost laughing, but catching himself before the sound echoes too loud. You both stand straight again when one of the priests glances your way. Historians still argue whether the temple offerings were believed to feed the gods' spirits or simply honor them through ritual. In some texts, it is said that the aroma itself was the divine portion, while the physical food belonged to the priests. You imagine invisible mouths drinking the scent of roasted grain, feasting on smoke and silence. The chanting deepens. The high priest steps forward and lifts both arms. His voice rises above the others, reciting words that have been spoken every evening for hundreds of years. You know the rhythm by heart, though you do not understand every phrase. It is a language meant for gods, not guards. The temple torches flicker in unison, casting long waves of light that roll across the carvings. You can see the painted eyes of the statues glimmer briefly, almost as if something behind them has awakened. The priests bow as one. The air feels heavier now, dense with meaning you can only feel, not explain. A novice steps forward with a jar of milk and pours it carefully into a shallow bowl. He hesitates for a heartbeat, perhaps nervous, then steps back quickly. The high priest gives him a small nod. You notice how the boy exhales afterward, shoulders loosening with relief. You remember being that young once, when every gesture near the gods felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. The final offering is incense. Two acolytes light the charcoal in small bronze dishes, and soon the smoke begins to rise in pale ribbons. It twirls lazily toward the ceiling, turning the air to gold where the torchlight catches it. The smell is sharp at first, resin and cedar, then fades into something sweet and sleepy. You close your eyes for a moment, just breathing it in. The scent seems to dissolve the weight of the day, softening your muscles and thoughts alike. Even the guard's usual stiffness eases. Kepper yawns quietly beside you, and you feel your own body mirror the motion. When the chant ends, the silence that follows is thick and perfect. No one moves. For a few seconds, it feels as though the entire temple, the stone, the air, even the gods themselves, has taken a single deep breath. Then the high priest lowers his hands, and the spell breaks. The attendants move swiftly to clear the space. The food is taken away to be divided. The oil lamps are trimmed. The smoke begins to thin, revealing the last traces of light leaking through the upper windows. You glance outside the gate. The city beyond is awash in the amber of dusk. You can see faint movements, distant figures heading home, animals being led to pens, a boat gliding along the Nile like a black line against fire-colored water. The day is almost done, but not for you. Kepper stretches his back with a groan. I would trade every god in this temple for one cool jug of beer, he mutters. You smirk. You might have to explain that when they start listening. He laughs softly, shaking his head. They stopped listening to me years ago. You let his words drift away into the quiet. The torches flicker again as the air cools, casting a softer light now that the sun has gone. The statues of the gods stand unmoved, patient and unblinking, as if they are waiting for night to come and bring the world back into balance. You adjust your spear, feeling the familiar weight in your hands. Somewhere deep inside the temple, a bell chimes once, the signal to prepare for the night guard rotation. The priests retreat into the inner chambers. The cooks douse their fires. The novices carry empty trays away, their bare feet whispering against the stone. You remain in your post, listening as the sound of footsteps fades into stillness. The last of the incense curls upward, then disappears. The day's final offering has been made. The gods are fed. The world is balanced once again. You take a deep breath of the cooling air, the taste of ash and spice still faint on your tongue, and look toward the gate where shadows deepen. Night waits there, ready to claim its watch. The last light of the day fades behind the pylons, and darkness begins its slow descent over the temple. The world seems to exhale, the air cooling just enough to remind you that the day is finally giving up its hold. The torches along the walls are lit one by one, their flames dancing in small bursts as the oil catches. Shadows stretch and fold across the carvings, turning the painted gods into figures that seem to move when no one looks. This is the hour when travelers arrive, those who walk long roads by the fading sun, hoping to reach the temple before night shuts the gates. Most come seeking rest or blessings for the journey ahead. But tonight, as you take your post near the entrance, there is something different in the air. The sand beyond the gate glows faintly under the dying light, a haze rising from the heat that still clings to the earth. You squint into the distance. A solitary figure moves slowly along the path. A man, tall, wrapped in a traveling cloak the color of dust. He carries no visible burden except a small leather satchel slung across his shoulder. As he draws closer, you notice the way he walks. Steady, unhurried, each step deliberate. His face is mostly hidden beneath a hood, though the faint gleam of bronze jewelry catches the last light. He stops a few paces from the gate and raises a hand in greeting, his voice low but clear. "Peace upon this house," he says. "I come with a message for the high priest." You and Kepper exchange a glance. Travelers sometimes bring messages from merchants, from officials, from other temples, but they rarely arrive alone, and never after sunset. Kepper steps forward first, his tone cautious. "From where?" "From the Delta," the man replies. "From Tanis. My name is Nefru." The name means nothing to you. You study him quietly. His cloak is worn, but the way he stands upright, composed, suggests someone accustomed to authority. His hands are rough, yet his nails are clean. His accent carries the softness of the northern marshes, yet his words flow with the weight of practice. "Your message," you say. "You may give it to the scribe." He shakes his head. "The words are for the high priest's ears only." You feel Kepper tense beside you. "Then you will wait," he says. "The high priest does not receive travelers at this hour." The man lowers his hood slightly, revealing eyes pale as stone under the torchlight. "I will wait," he says simply. You motion for him to follow to the guard's bench near the wall. He sits without complaint, his movements smooth, controlled. You can tell he is used to watching rather than being watched. From inside, you hear the low tones of priests preparing for the night rites. Their chanting is softer now, private, meant not for display, but for the god's quiet attention. You send a novice to inform the high priest of the traveler's arrival. The boy scurries off, sandals slapping softly against the stone. The stranger sits still, his gaze occasionally lifting to the carvings on the walls. "This temple," he murmurs, "is older than the reign of your fathers. It was built to hold words that even kings have forgotten." You say nothing. The temple hears many kinds of talk, some of reverence, some of pride, and some that sounds too much like prophecy. You've learned to let the walls sort such words themselves. Minutes stretch. The torches crackle. A faint breeze carries the scent of the river, that blend of silt, water, and life that belongs only to Egypt. You glance at the man again. He does not move, but his eyes follow everything. The flicker of light, the shift of guards, even the pattern of smoke twisting upward. Kepper mutters quietly. He looks like he's measuring the walls. You reply just as softly. Maybe he's measuring the silence. Historians still argue about the presence of foreign envoys and travelers in Egypt's temples. Some claim these messengers carried sacred knowledge, while others believe they were spies cloaked in devotion. Looking at the man now, you understand why the debate endures. There is something in him that does not belong entirely to one world or the other. The novice returns at last, bowing quickly. "The high priest will see him," he says. In the small hall, the traveler stands smoothly, his movements precise. He turns to you and bows slightly, just enough to show respect without submission. "You have my thanks," he says, and follows the novice inside. You and Kepper exchange a long look. "Strange hour for messages," he murmurs. "Stranger, messenger," you answer. The gate remains open, but the air feels heavier now. The sound of chanting fades further into the distance as the night settles in. You can hear the faint hiss of oil lamps being trimmed, the scurry of mice somewhere near the grain stores and beyond the walls, the soft chorus of frogs beginning along the Nile. Time moves slower after sunset. The temple shifts its rhythm. The voices of priests become murmurs. The movement of attendants becomes shadows. You stand watch at the gate, eyes half on the stars above and half on the doorway through which the traveler disappeared. It is nearly an hour before he returns. When he does, his face is calm, unreadable. The high priest does not accompany him, and the novice who led him looks pale and shaken. You glance at the man's satchel. It hangs lighter now, the clasp slightly loosened. Your message delivered. You ask. He inclines his head. The gods are satisfied. Kepper frowns, and the priest listens as the gods do. The traveler says softly. In silence, you feel something in his tone. Not threat, not arrogance, but finality. Whatever words were spoken inside, they will not leave those walls. He turns toward the gate, adjusting his cloak. My journey continues south, he says. The night is kind to those who walk in faith. You nod, stepping aside to let him pass. He moves past you, his footsteps soft but steady. At the threshold, he pauses and glances back once. Guard the silence, he says. It is worth more than gold. Then he disappears into the darkness beyond the pylons, his figure swallowed by the night. You and Kepper stand in silence for a long while. The torches flicker, the stars begin to bloom across the sky, and the sound of the river grows louder as the city falls asleep. What do you think that was about? Kepper finally asks. You shake your head. Messages meant for gods never reach men. He grunts in agreement, then settles against the wall. The night wind rises, carrying the scent of cool water and jasmine. The temple, once golden and loud, now breathes in deep shadow. Another day has passed its turning point, leaving behind only mystery and the slow whisper of the Nile. The night comes fully now. The temple, which only hours ago glowed like a living thing under the sun, folds itself into shadow. The torches along the pylons flicker softly, throwing long, moving shapes across the sandstone. You stand beside one of them, feeling the faint warmth of the flame against your cheek. The air is cooler, but the stone still radiates the day's heat like the slow heartbeat of the earth itself. It is the hour of the night preparation, when all who serve the temple move like ghosts, finishing their final tasks before silence must reign. The priests retreat into their chambers, the novices sweep the last dust from the courtyards, and the guards, you among them, take up positions that will not change until dawn. You lean your spear against the wall and reach for the small clay jar of oil that sits nearby. The scent of it, thick and earthy, is familiar, used every night to coat the metal tip and prevent corrosion. You pour a few drops onto your hands and rub them along the bronze. The metal glows faintly in the torchlight, alive for a moment, then dull again. Across the courtyard, Kepper hums quietly as he checks the torch brackets. The tune is an old one, something about sailors and stars. You have heard it so often that you no longer know if it belongs to him or to the temple itself. Once the torches are secure, you move together along the outer wall, checking the latches, the hinges, the shadows. Each sound, the scrape of sandal, the brush of fabric, feels sharper now. The night magnifies small things. Even the whisper of wind through the reeds sounds like speech if you listen too long. The gate creaks as you test it, its weight shifting slightly in the frame. You trace your hand along the carved symbols that guard it. The eye of Horus, the wing of Isis, the knot of eternity. Your fingers know every line. You have touched them every night for years, though you still cannot tell if you are blessing the gate or asking it to bless you. Quiet night, Kepper says finally, breaking the stillness. Too quiet, you smile faintly. You said the same thing this morning. He chuckles, the sound dry and low. Maybe I'm right both times. The torch beside him sputters, throwing up a brief burst of sparks before steadying again. The shadows jump across the courtyard, dancing over statues and steps. For a brief moment, it looks like the gods are moving again. A trick of light, perhaps, or maybe something more. You finish your circuit and return to the main gate. Nebra, the chief guard, stands waiting there. His eyes are sharp even in the dim light. You'll hold the outer watch, he says quietly. No one enters after the midnight chant. No one leaves without word from me. You nod. The archives, locked and sealed, he replies. The priests are satisfied, or at least pretending to be. You think of Didu, the nervous scribe, and his talk of missing tablets and unbalanced numbers. The temple seems calm on the surface, but beneath it, small fractures run deep. You have learned not to ask questions you are not meant to know the answers to. Nebra studies you for a moment longer, then says softly, "Keep your eyes open, but keep your thoughts closed." It is advice, not warning, and you take it as both. When he leaves, you settle into your post by the gate. The night hums gently, alive with small sounds, the buzz of insects, the faint rustle of palm fronds, the distant croak of frogs along the river. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city murmurs itself to sleep. You rest the butt of your spear against the stone and look up. The sky is impossibly wide, filled with stars, so sharp they seem to pierce the darkness. You recognize a few of them, the ones your father once pointed out when you were young. The belt of Osiris, the star of the north, the hunter's crook. He told you the gods placed them there to remind men to keep watch, even in sleep. Kepper joins you again, carrying a small bowl of dates. He offers one wordlessly. You take it, the sweetness sharp against your dry tongue. Think the gods ever look down and see us doing this? He asks quietly. Every night you answer, and every night they look away. He laughs softly. Wise of them. You both fall silent, listening to the steady crackle of the torches. The air carries a faint trace of incense from within, the priests performing their final prayers before the sanctuary doors are closed. You can picture it even from here, the flickering lamps, the smoke curling toward the ceiling, the high priest murmuring words no common ear may hear. Historians still argue whether such midnight prayers were for the gods or for the priests themselves, whether they believed the divine truly slept or simply withdrew into silence. You think it must be the latter. No god could sleep in a place so heavy with memory. Time drifts. The courtyard empties completely now. The last novice hurries past, bowing to you before vanishing into the side corridor. You are alone with Kepper and the night. The torches burn low, their light turning from gold to red. You find yourself listening for footsteps that never come, for voices that exist only in imagination. The temple at night plays tricks on the senses. The stone creaks, the air moves strangely, and sometimes it feels as if the walls themselves breathe. You pace slowly to stay awake. The rhythm of your sandals echoes softly between the columns. Every now and then, you stop to tighten a strap or adjust your belt. The spear feels heavier in your hands now, though it is no different than it was in the morning. Fatigue does not change the world, only how you see it. At one point, you hear a faint scraping sound near the far end of the wall. You freeze, eyes narrowing. It comes again, metal against stone, quiet but deliberate. You raise your torch and step closer. Nothing, only the flicker of light against carved figures, their faces expressionless. You wait another moment, listening, then the sound fades. Probably a rat, Kepper calls softly from his post. They like the grain stores. Or thieves, you answer, he chuckles. If it's a thief, he'll find only prayers and stone. Let him take those, if he can carry them. You let the silence swallow the words. Minutes pass, maybe hours. Time blurs. The torchlight dances and steadies. The stars wheel slowly above the pylons. Somewhere deep within, a low gong sounds, once, twice, 3 times. The midnight chant has begun. You bow your head slightly, the gesture automatic. The sound rolls through the temple like a breath drawn by something vast and unseen. When it fades, even the wind seems to still. For a long time after, the world is utterly quiet. No footsteps, no whispers, only the pulse of your own heartbeat and the soft hiss of the torches dying low. Night has claimed the temple completely now. The gods dream, the priests sleep, and the guards stand between both, half in shadow, half in light. The watchers of a world too old to ever truly rest. The night has grown deeper, heavy, and slow. The last torch near the courtyard wall flickers in uneven rhythm, its light stretching long and thin over the stone. The temple lies in near-perfect stillness, that kind of silence that hums in your ears when there is no other sound left. It is the hour before dawn, the hardest hour to stay awake, when even the gods seem to dream. You move carefully along your patrol route, every step deliberate. Your sandals whispering against the worn limestone floor. The air is cool now, almost cold, carrying faint smells from the outside world, the damp sweetness of the Nile and the sharp bite of wind over sand. The sky above the pylons has lost its blackness and now holds a faint trace of blue, like ink washed thin with water. You pause near one of the smaller shrines tucked against the inner wall. The statue there is of Anubis, jackal-headed, carved in dark stone that seems to drink the light. Someone has left a small offering before it, a loaf of bread and a single lotus flower beginning to wilt. The smell is faint but pleasant, earthy and sweet. You bow your head for a moment, not out of duty, but habit. Kepper's post is a few columns away. You can just make out his shape in the dimness, sitting on the edge of the steps, his spear across his knees. He is awake, but his body moves in slow rhythm. The kind of half-conscious awareness every night guard learns. You consider calling out, but decide against it. Speech feels wrong in this quiet. You keep walking, circling the courtyard. The torchlight from the gate dances against the walls, casting strange shapes that come and go with each shift of flame. In some moments, they look like animals moving through the carvings. In others, like men, frozen mid-step, the eyes of the statues seem to follow, though you know it is only the fire playing tricks. Still, you cannot shake the feeling that something is alive within the stone. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians truly believed their statues contained the essence of the gods, or if they were symbols of devotion. You have no such debate in your mind. When you spend your life guarding these figures, feeling their stillness press against you night after night, you begin to sense that belief and reality have no border between them. You reach the far end of the courtyard, where the air feels slightly cooler. The torches burn lower here, the light reduced to small, trembling halos. In the faint glow, you see the small doorway that leads toward the inner halls. It is closed and sealed, as always, yet tonight, something about it feels aware. You hesitate, the instinct of long habit making you scan for anything out of place. There, a faint sound, like fabric brushing against stone. You turn your head quickly, but the corridor beyond the doorway is empty. The air smells faintly of incense, though no ritual should be happening at this hour. You stand still for a long time, listening. The silence presses in around you, thick as water. Then, faintly, from somewhere deep inside the temple, you hear it, a single, low note of chanting. It is not loud, not even clear, but unmistakable. The tone is lower than the usual prayers, slower, almost like the sound of breath turned into music. The hair along your arms rises. You step closer, careful not to make a sound. The sealed door remains shut, its carvings glinting softly in the half-light. You press your ear close to the surface. The chanting continues, faint but steady. You cannot make out words, only rhythm, long pauses, slow rises, like the tide moving against the shore. Kepper's voice breaks the stillness behind you. "Do you hear that?" he whispers. You turn slightly, nodding. From inside, he frowns, pushing himself up. The priests said all were dismissed until dawn. You look again toward the door. Maybe the gods had other plans. For a moment, neither of you move. The sound continues, weaving through the stillness. Then it stops completely, as if it had never been there. The silence that follows feels heavier than before. Kepper exhales slowly. "If I go tell Nebra we heard voices from the sealed hall, he'll think we've been drinking. Then we do not tell him," you say quietly. He nods once. "Agreed." You both stand there a moment longer, staring at the door. The torch beside it sputters, the flame bending as if disturbed by breath. You reach out instinctively to steady it, but the air feels colder than it should. Then the feeling passes. The torch steadies. The stone is just stone again. You walk back toward your posts in silence. The temple seems to sigh behind you, the sound of settling dust or shifting air. When you glance back once more, the door looks no different than before, but you know you will remember the sound of that chant for the rest of your life. Kepper resumes his seat, muttering something about spirits with poor timing. You almost laugh, but the sound sticks in your throat. The silence feels too fragile now to break. You settle again by the gate, your eyes on the sky. The faint blue has deepened. Stars begin to fade one by one, swallowed by the promise of dawn. You feel tired but alert, the strange wakefulness that comes when you are too close to morning to rest. You look toward the horizon, where the first pale light begins to bleed into the darkness. The outline of the pylons sharpens, and the carvings of the gods regain their form. You realize you have survived another night, not just against the dangers of men, but against the weight of the unknown. Kepper yawns beside you, stretching his arms. The worst is done, he says. You nod, though part of you feels that something has shifted. Not in the temple, perhaps, but in you. The night always leaves something behind, something unseen but heavy. You grip your spear a little tighter and watch as the first birds begin to stir in the palm trees beyond the wall. Their faint calls sound like a promise that light always returns, no matter how long the darkness lingers. For now, that is enough. You breathe in deeply, the cool air sharp in your chest. Another night ends, and another story sinks quietly into the walls of the gods. The sky is turning grey-blue now, the thin edge of dawn stretching across the horizon, yet the temple remains wrapped in shadow. The torches have burned low, their light small and soft, painting gentle halos over the carvings that seem to move with each flicker. The night should be fading, but inside the walls, time feels paused. You sense it immediately, the stillness that is not peace but expectancy. Kepper is half asleep beside the gate, chin resting on his chest. You do not wake him. He has stood enough long nights beside you, and the quiet seems almost to cradle him. You keep your eyes fixed on the long corridor leading to the inner halls. The air there shimmers faintly, as if caught between two worlds. Then it happens again, that low, slow note. A voice, perhaps, or several voices moving together, faint but real. The same deep chant that echoed through the sealed door hours ago. You stand straight, every muscle alert now. The sound flows like water, steady, rhythmic, not fearful but solemn. The language is older than any you have ever heard. The words thick and heavy, carrying weight even though you cannot understand them. You glance at Kepper. He stirs slightly, then opens his eyes, following your gaze. Not again, he whispers, rubbing his face. It's from the inner hall. You murmur, the priests said no rites tonight. Kepper frowns. Maybe they changed their minds. You shake your head, no light, no movement. Listen, the sound is unmistakable now, low, measured, and distant, like a prayer spoken through layers of stone. It is coming from deep inside the temple, from the sanctuary where the statue of the god rests. Without speaking further, you move toward the sound, keeping your footsteps light. The torchlight ripples along the walls as you pass, the carved figures flickering in and out of shadow. The air grows cooler the closer you get to the sanctum. It smells faintly of oil and smoke, but beneath it, something else, something old, metallic, almost like rain. At the entrance to the inner corridor, you stop. The door you saw sealed earlier now stands slightly ajar. Only a crack, but enough for a line of gold light to slip through and spill across the floor. Kepper inhales sharply beside you. That door was closed, he says. You nod slowly. It still is. Almost. You both stand there for a long moment, neither willing to move closer. The sound of chanting continues, a slow pulse, each note vibrating through the floor, through the air, through your chest. It does not sound human. not because it is monstrous, but because it feels too vast, too ancient. Finally, Kepper whispers, "Do we tell Nebra?" You shake your head. "If we speak before we see, it will become rumor. Let it stay truth or nothing." He hesitates, then nods, gripping his spear tightly. Together, you step closer to the door. The line of light widens slightly as your shadow crosses it. The golden glow is not torchlight. It pulses like sunlight reflected on water. You peer through the gap. The sight that meets your eyes freezes you in place. Inside, the sanctuary is not empty. 5 priests stand in a half-circle before the great statue of Ammon. Their faces are hidden by veils of white linen. Each holds a small lamp burning with pale flame. Between them, a stone basin glows faintly, its surface rippling though no hand stirs it. The sound you hear, that long, deep note, comes not from their mouths, but from the air itself, vibrating like a living presence. The statue of the god looms above them, its golden face reflecting the light from the basin. For a moment, you think you see the lips move, a trick of the flicker, perhaps, or the strain of sleeplessness. Yet, as the chant rises and falls, the air around the statue seems to pulse in rhythm, as if it too breathes. You draw back slowly, heart pounding. Kepper's eyes are wide. "What are they doing?" he whispers. You shake your head. "Not a ritual I've ever seen." Historians still argue whether secret midnight rites were performed for the gods, or for something else entirely. The stars, the spirits, or the hidden names of the divine. Some believe only a handful of priests were allowed to witness them, their tongues bound by oath and fear. You are seeing what you should not, what perhaps no guard was ever meant to see. You lean forward once more, unable to stop yourself. The air within the chamber shimmers now. One of the priests steps forward, lowering his lamp into the basin. The flame does not die. It sinks into the water and glows brighter, as if feeding the surface. Then a deep vibration rolls through the stone beneath your feet. Not an earthquake, but a resonance, a hum that feels alive. Kepper grabs your arm. "Enough," he hisses. "We should not be here." You step back reluctantly, the golden light still playing against your face. "We were already here," you say quietly. "That cannot be undone." You retreat to the courtyard, neither of you speaking. The air feels heavier now, charged. You can still hear the chant faintly, echoing through the stone. Kepper wipes sweat from his forehead. "If anyone asks, we heard nothing." You nod slowly. "Nothing at all." The words hang between you like an oath. Minutes stretch into an hour. The chanting eventually fades, replaced once again by silence. The torches near the gate burn low, their light thin and trembling. The horizon beyond the wall begins to brighten, the faintest pink bleeding into the grey. Kepper breaks the silence. You think the gods were speaking. You take a long breath. "No, I think the priests were listening." He shivers slightly, rubbing his arms. "Then may the gods never choose to speak again." The two of you watch as dawn begins to press softly against the sky. The temple remains still, but you can feel it. Something deep beneath the stone has changed. You do not know whether it is good or bad, only that it is ancient. The first bird calls somewhere above the pylons. The sound is small, but it feels like release. The night's weight begins to lift, carried away by the first touch of light. You straighten your spear, exhale, and turn toward the eastern wall. The world is returning to motion. The stars fade, the shadows loosen, and somewhere behind those sealed doors, the last lamp is extinguished. The gods, it seems, have finished dreaming for now. The first line of sunlight brushes across the pylons, and the temple begins to wake once more. The air shifts, a quiet sigh through stone and dust, as if the building itself has stretched after a long night of holding its breath. The statues, the carvings, the columns all catch the dawn glow slowly, color seeping back into their edges. You stand where you have stood every morning before this one, near the great gate. The sky above is pale pink, fading to gold near the horizon. The torches sputter in the new light, their flames shrinking as if shy before the sun. You reach up and snuff one out with the flat of your hand, the smell of oil and smoke clinging briefly to your skin. Kepper yawns beside you, rubbing at his eyes. His voice is rough with fatigue. "We made it through another night," he says. You nod, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "And the world did not end." He chuckles weakly. "That's as good as a blessing." You both fall silent again, letting the quiet settle. The chanting from the inner hall has long stopped. Whatever secret words were spoken in the sanctuary now belong to the stone that holds them. The priests will emerge soon, faces calm and unreadable, as if nothing unusual ever touched the night. The city beyond the temple walls begins to stir. You can hear it faintly, the creak of carts, the call of fishermen along the river, the distant laughter of children too young to understand reverence. The smell of baking bread drifts through the air, warm and familiar. Life, patient and constant, returns with the light. You adjust your stance, your back aching slightly from the long hours. The spear feels heavier now, not from weight but from time. You lean on it a little, watching the sun creep higher. The sandstone glows brighter by the minute, each carving catching fire in the light. The gods themselves seem to shimmer, their faces calm but radiant, as though pleased to be seen again. A priest emerges from the inner hall, his steps slow, his head bowed. You recognize him, the same one who led the morning offerings yesterday. He glances your way briefly, but says nothing. His eyes are distant, fixed somewhere beyond sight. A faint trace of incense clings to his robe. Behind him, the other priests begin to appear, each moving silently toward their quarters. No one speaks. The night, it seems, has left them wordless. Kepper mutters under his breath. They look like men walking in dreams. Maybe they still are, you reply softly. He stretches his arms, groaning. When I sleep, I will dream of wine, not gods. You smile faintly. That might be safer. The chief guard, Nebra, appears next. His limp is more noticeable in the cool morning light. He stops near you, eyes scanning the courtyard. "Quiet night?" he asks, though his tone suggests he already knows the answer he wants. You meet his gaze evenly. "Quiet, you say?" He nods once, satisfied. Then the gods are content. He turns and walks toward the priests, his silhouette framed by sunlight. You let out a slow breath you didn't realize you had been holding. Kepper gives you a sidelong glance. "You said nothing," he murmurs. "Nothing worth saying." You answer, "Historians still argue whether the guards of the temples were true believers or merely servants of routine. Some claim they were men of faith. Others, men of duty, but standing here, with dawn spilling over the temple walls, you feel both are the same. Belief is simply the patience to keep standing when no one is watching. The light strengthens. The Nile shimmers in the distance, a band of gold cutting through the haze. Birds sweep low across the water, their wings flashing in the sun. You can almost hear the city fully awaken. Hammers clanging, animals stirring, voices calling. The ordinary world returns, bright and busy. Kepa straightens his spear, his posture proud despite his fatigue. Our watch is done, he says. Another begins. You nod. At the far end of the courtyard, two younger guards approach, their faces fresh, their eyes still heavy with the comfort of short sleep. You greet them quietly, exchanging nods as they take your place at the gate. For a moment, you stand there with Kepa, neither moving. The temple looms behind you, vast and silent, its secrets once again hidden beneath the hum of daily ritual. The statues glow brighter as the sun climbs higher, their eyes blank but alive in the light. You think of the man who came with a message, the stolen tablets, the whispered chant that broke the silence. None of it will be spoken aloud. Temples, like rivers, carry their own secrets beneath the surface. Kepa adjusts his belt and grins faintly. Same time tomorrow, you smile, until the gods build new walls. He laughs softly and heads toward the barracks, leaving you alone for a moment longer. The sound of his sandals fades, replaced by the gentle hum of morning life. You turn once more toward the gate. The first visitors have already begun to gather outside: farmers, merchants, mothers with children. Their silhouettes shimmer in the morning heat. Soon the day will begin again. The prayers, the chants, the offerings, the endless rhythm of devotion. You touch the carvings on the gate as you pass, your fingertips tracing the same lines they traced yesterday and the day before, and every day before that. The eye of Horus, still watching, the knot of eternity, still unbroken. You step aside, letting the next guard take your post. The light spills through the open gate, bright and forgiving. You close your eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth spread across your face. The temple breathes again. The world turns, the gods keep their silence, and you, a simple watcher in their endless story, walk away into the dawn. The sound of the city fades to a soft hum now, far away beyond the temple walls. The air is warm but gentle, carrying the scent of bread, river water, and dust. Inside, the temple settles into its morning rhythm. Footsteps, voices, the faint clatter of jars, all wrapped in a kind of peace that only comes after a long night of waiting. You find a quiet corner near the outer courtyard, where the sunlight pools like gold on the stone. You sit for a while, resting your spear beside you, and close your eyes. The coolness of the shade mixes with the warmth of the morning. It feels like a slow exhale, the kind that eases the weight from your chest. Somewhere, a bell rings faintly. Birds move through the air above, their wings slicing the sky into fragments of light. The temple breathes with you, slow, deep, unhurried. You let the images of the night drift away one by one. The glow behind the sealed door, the voice that rose from stone, the face of the traveler who spoke of silence. They all fade into memory, as if they belonged to another world, another dream. Here there is only stillness. The sound of your heartbeat matches the rhythm of the morning breeze. The world feels lighter, smaller, and perfectly balanced for just this moment. The gods are quiet again. The day has begun again. You open your eyes, let the sun touch your face, and know that whatever happens tonight, the cycle will hold. Dawn, duty, silence, and sleep. You stand, lift your spear, and step into the light.